All right. Should be live. Okay. So what I want to do in this video is just explore the Notion API a little bit, kind of talk about what Notion is, kind of look at what might be possible with it, and then play around with one of their examples. Potentially do a tutorial in the near future if it looks like something I'm interested in. Now, what I will say is that I do use Notion. I use Notion because it's a great tool that does a lot of different things. And when you have a bunch of different tools and when you're doing a bunch of productivity things, especially in engineering, you want a single tool that does everything if it does it right. And Notion is the closest thing I've ever seen to that. So I'll show you a couple of things that I use it for. I use it a lot for to-do lists. I use it for lists like this. For example, when I was building the chat tutorial that I put up not that long ago, I used Notion to create this massive to-do list. And what's great about it is you can create to-do lists. You can also create boards. So this is kind of like a Kanban board where you can move tasks across the board. And it's in the exact same location as all of these other tools. So you can create, let's get out of there, create a page. I can create tables, boards. You saw the board list. You saw the list. Calendars, galleries, timelines, and timelines is like a Google Calendar weekly view type thing where it shows the events, or hourly view where it shows the events and all that good stuff. So there's tons of stuff you can do, and it's all in one single location, which is why Notion is probably as popular as it is. So that's kind of an idea of what Notion is. The Notion API, which is now in public beta, is now a way for programmers to interact with their interface, or what I should say is interact with their code through their interface and do super cool stuff. Now, I don't, I've never used this. This was just released, I think, like 24 hours ago, if that, so in public. So really, this live stream is just going to be me experimenting and taking a look at the API and seeing what can be done with it. So to get things started off, I'm just going to read down this Notion API homepage, move over to the guides, just look at some example code, look at the API reference, discuss different things that could be possible, and all that good stuff. So to start here, it says, start building with the Notion API. Okay, so it connects Notion pages and databases to the tools you use every day, creating powerful workflows. Okay. So if we go to Notion here, I can create a page, and I see the concept of a page, but then you can choose a database. So let's just kind of create something here. I think the simplest form of this would be a table. So let's create a table. I'm zooming in a little, and I can collapse the side. Cool. So here we have a basic table, and it looks like it's sortable, and we can create new headers. Oh yeah, so we can rename the headers and all that good stuff. So name, let's just say age. Make it really simple. This is like people. So Bob is 24. Jane is 31. Oh, I have to click enter, I think. There we go. 24. Oh, is this, so by default, it looks like it's created, this is a list. So it has the concept of types. So I could put a text, but I think a number would make more sense now. If I put 24, there we go. Okay. So this database or this table has the concept of types in it, which is really neat. And then I can create new headers. If I think about address, maybe that would probably be text, but maybe there's something specific for address. There's email, phone, URL, checkbox, files, and media. So really their table is actually pretty featureful. So I mean, that's just a cool thing that I just noticed. But how do I delete this? Okay, so I just click delete. So what I want to do, I guess, eventually is be able to build something like this in Notion and then use the API to integrate with the tool that I create or a tool that already exists and synchronize workflows and that sort of thing. That's kind of what it's saying. Building blocks for developers. Aggregate data from many sources. Aggregate data from many sources into your team's workspace. Spend less time context switching and increase visibility across the software and services you rely on. Okay, so that's kind of what I was just saying. Now here is API reference examples and partner with us. So it looks like they have a partner program, which I'm not going to go into that because I'm not super interested in their partner program. Examples, a starting point to see what's possible with the API so that you can start bringing your own to life, which is what we're going to look at. And then we're going to look at the API reference, probably while we do this. And then the rest of this page is just basic stuff like their blog, newsletter, their Twitter account, and some help, and then a change log. It looks like the last change that was made was yesterday. Hello world, the Notion API is now in public beta. So that is actually, like I said, really, this is brand new stuff. Yeah, so let's hop on over to, oh, it looks like I might have potentially found a bug on their website. I clicked guides. Hold on, let's do this again. So I'm on home. I clicked guides. It did it a second ago. It's on video. I saw it. Anyway, I clicked guides and it looked like it went to a new page, but it was still the same page. Found a bug, but I couldn't recreate it. So getting started. Learn how to make your first API requests using Notion API. Well, let's just let's not go to the guides. That's not what I meant. Let's go to the examples. And let's see, we have sync Notion with GitHub issues. Now this is interesting. Another one is send an email from a Notion trigger. So this Notion integration sends an email whenever the status property of a page in a database is updated. So the status property of a page. What does that look like? So let's create a page and we'll just say Twitch, YouTube, testing live. Yeah. Testing live. And let's do just an empty document. Now, how do I update the status? What is the status? What is it talking about? Status. Add icon, add cover. Oh, you know what it might be talking about? Let's see. Can we do a to-do list perhaps? Sure. Do live stream. So in a sense, I guess that might be the status updating because it was a change to the document in some way. And that would also be a status change because technically you're saying that a to-do has been completed. So maybe that's what it's talking about when it says the status property of a page in a database is updated. So this sample code shows how to use Notion to cause an external action. In this case, the integration sends emails using SendGrid's API. So actually, one thing that we could end up doing with this is creating like a Discord bot, which would be pretty cool. Custom Notion front end coming up. Hello, everyone in the chat. Thanks for showing up. So what I want to do is one of these, just get it loaded up. I'm kind of interested in this one because I could create a Discord bot and I don't know, create like a to-do list or something like that. And then whenever one of the to-do items gets completed, send a notification in a Discord bot or something like that. But actually, that's just for fun. But eventually, we could do something like this where we have a Kanban board that has an integration with both GitHub and Discord and Slack and all kinds of stuff. So really, this is kind of opening some ideas for me. That's pretty interesting because you can really kind of automate these workflows and have status updates and all kinds of cool stuff. So I think I'm just going to start it off with this, but actually let's just start it off with this one because I think this is going to be the easiest one. Before I even go into reading about this project in the README, I want to look at the index.js and just see what the code looks like. Okay, so they're using environment variables. There is okay, so you're importing, they have a JavaScript library. That's nice. So you're not just doing HTTP requests raw using fetch, probably. You're probably using their client SDK. So SGMail, SendGrid. So that's what they're using to send emails. Cool. So they're just creating a SGMail instance, and then they're saying they're creating a Notion instance using an environment variable to kind of create the authentication flow. I'm guessing that this looks like a key of some sort. What is going on? Oh, there we go. If I go to the .env file, which they have listed here, the Notion key, yeah, so it's an API key. So the authentication is just the API key. Database ID, so some sort of unique ID that identifies which of these databases you're working with. So in the case of this to-do thing, it would be the database associated with this. It would have a unique ID that we would need to pass in somewhere. A JSON object to hold all the tasks in the Notion database, so that's specific to this integration. So they are... A lot of this code is specific to their integration, so I'm just trying to find the juicy stuff. Where's the hook? So I'm sure that they create a hook of some sort, right? Find changes and send mail. Is that this? Yep. So get tasks from database is a function that creates the request payload based on the presence of a start cursor. Okay, yeah, let's clone this and let's put in our, or my, I should say, my actual credentials. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out so I can see everything that I need to see in order to clone this. Where is the, oh, I see. So I'm actually, instead of cloning it, I'm just going to copy it because this is actually a subdirectory. So index.js, copy the package.json file, which is right here. That should be all I need. Obviously, I'll have to run npm install, which should only take a quick second. And that's complete. .env is not installed, even though I just installed it. I think that's VS Code just lagging on us. Yeah, cool. Now I need a .env file, .env. Now, if you're not familiar with Node.js stuff, if I go to the top here, you can see that it's using .env.config. That's loading the environment variables from a .env file. So I need to actually put some stuff in here. There we go. I need to put this in my .env file. So I'm not going to do anything with SendGrid, the email API. I'm probably going to switch this over to like a Discord or Slack bot. So I'm going to keep it, but I'm going to put a space between it to kind of show that I'm going to change it, if that makes sense. So I do need these two, and I don't need these because I'm not going to be doing email stuff. But again, just put it down here to remind myself that I need to change this to more of a Discord bot type of thing. So the first thing I need to do is get an API key for Notion. Now, hopefully, if I do this on live, I have the ability to later delete that key, and then, you know, I don't really want people using my API key, so... But I do want to show what I'm doing, so yeah. Click My Integrations, I'm guessing. Okay, new integration. We'll call this live stream. Whoa. Testing? Live stream testing? Don't need a logo, do I? Is that a required field? I hope not. Submit. Cool. Is there a way to copy this without showing it? Oh, I can trust you, Juiced sure? I can't even pronounce your name. How could I trust you? Juiced sure. Okay. I think that's right. All right, I'll trust you, Juiced sure. Juiced sure. Got it. Internal integration or public integration available for any Notion user, available for workspaces you're an admin of. Well, probably internal. But yeah, I mean, you know what? I'm just gonna have no choice here but to show it. Yoast sure. Okay, sorry about that. Yoast sure. We will close our eyes. Okay, close your eyes. Don't look at this. Don't look at it. Whatever you do, don't look at this. Anyway, I'll delete it soon, hopefully. So I paste in the API key, and then I think that's everything in here. So what is this API? This is the Notion API. And if you look earlier on in the video, you'll learn all about what it is we're doing. So, and I need a database API. I mean, not database API, database ID. Now, where to get the database ID? I see nothing about how to get that. I mean, I don't know how to get the database ID. That might be a missing link in their documentation, or I should just stop being lazy and go to their API reference and see. So we got to retrieve a database. Yeah, that's making sense. So somewhere on here would be an ID. Yeah, it's right here. Well, that's it. So we have to first retrieve I'm going to use Notion to like create a to-do list for the tutorial or for the video that I'm doing about Notion. Yeah. So the first step here is going to be to, let's say, retrieve the database. Then the second step is going to be get the ID from the object returned. That seems to be so far how to do it. This is a little bit scrunched up because I'm zoomed in so that you all can see what I'm doing. I wish there was a way to collapse the left rail. If anybody from Notion is watching, that would be a great feature. So yeah, this is the URL I need to hit in order to retrieve a database. So bring out trusty postman, and this is a GET request. And to answer your question, what can we do with it? Well, that's what I'm figuring out right now, because this is actually a brand new API. It came out like public beta about 24 hours ago or so. So all I'm doing is experimenting with it, seeing what can be done with it, and just kind of having some fun. So really what I need to do is get a list of databases so that I can choose the right one. So list databases is probably the URL that I want, which is exactly what I have here, I think. So send a request here. It's going to be like unauthorized API token is invalid. So I need to add that header, and I'm sure that there's a headers thing here. Yep. So it's going to be authorization and then the bearer token. So let's get that. So let's type in authorization. And it is a bearer token followed by the actual API token, which I have right here that nobody is looking at right now because I trust all of my viewers. And then we are going to paste that into here and click send. And it says unauthorized API token is invalid. What the? There we go. Let's try that again. Okay, fantastic. So I actually didn't get any results back, but I'm pretty sure I have a database. Did I need to? Let's see. Well, I thought I did. So let me go back to my integrations and just see if I need to enable access or something along those lines. Probably. Oops. Let's find out. Go to my integrations, click view integration, basic information. Maybe I need to do public? No. This is in my workspace. Yet I send the request and get back no results. Okay, well, maybe I'm getting the concept of pages and databases mixed up. So let's try to retrieve a page. Yeah. See what happens when I send this request. But instead of page ID, let's see if we can list them all out. Invalid request URL. So we have to give a specific page ID, but I don't know how to retrieve the page ID. So far I'm finding that it's a little bit confusing. The reference is your key, blah, blah, blah. Integrations, using the navigation on your left. Yeah. Conventions. Yeah, I know what RESTful APIs are. Yeah, I know what JSON is. Okay, that's not the best introduction I've ever seen. Authentication. Let's look at this. Yeah, they require authorization header, which I already added. I know that I'm authenticating properly because I'm actually getting a request back. If I were to do this, I'm getting a request. It's authorizing properly. So it's not this. Then the next one is pagination, versioning. Query a database, list databases. That's what I'm trying to do. Integrations can only access databases as a user. Oh, a user has shared with the integration. Okay. Integrations can only access databases a user has shared with the integration. So how do I share a database with the integration? Whoa, get out of there. Well, I would assume that since I made it, since I made it internal. Okay, well, let's just do this then. Let's try a public one. Users will be redirected to this path after they have... No, see, that's too much work for a test. So yeah, I don't... This is why I love playing around with new tools, because it's always like, I have no idea how this works, and then by the end of it, I'm like, I love this tool. But the process from having no idea how it works until then is very frustrating, usually. Unless they have absolutely amazing documentation, which I can't really brag about this one. Clearly, I'm missing something, right? Well, let's try to list all the users and just see if I can get at least one endpoint to work as expected. Here I am. I'm right here. So it's working for sure because I managed to get a list of users where I am a user because that's my name right there. I am indeed a person. And then here's another user. Oh, so the integration that I created is considered a user. Okay. And it's of type bot. Now that's kind of fascinating. So it also it almost makes me wonder if I need to be somehow specifying that I am this user when I make the request. So let's go back to the list databases and what is this required? It doesn't seem like it's required. I didn't pass it in before. Is that required here? Does it, or optional here? It is optional here too. So I didn't pass that in and I saw that it worked. So therefore I'm pretty sure I don't need to pass that in. Huh. Well, it says this endpoint is no longer recommended. Use search instead. Is that why? That's funny. Well, can I just search for everything without a keyword or a search term? Let's find out. Okay, this is clearly probably a post request though. It is indeed a post, and it requires query. Okay, let's pass that in. So it's a post request, and in the body, we're gonna do raw. Let's do JSON, and let's say query. And I think I named it something along the line. Oh, Twitch, YouTube testing. So let's call it. Let's just search for the word Twitch. And then there was another one, sort, which I don't think I need. I think the only required one would probably be query. So I'm gonna leave sort out. Let's just see what returns here. Nothing. Okay. So it must just be that I somehow need to set up the permissions or something, but there's nothing, I don't see anything about that in here. It's very confusing. And it could also, again, be that I didn't actually create a database, even though I thought I did. Is there anything that could give me any sort of confirmation? Well, when I found... Let's look at the Getting Started guide. Give your integration name Vacation Planner. Sure. Share a database with your integration. Wow, maybe that was something important that I should do. Integrations built with the API follow a similar permission system to the sharing permission for users. There's an important difference. Integrations don't have access to any pages or databases in the workspace at first. Well, that's good to know. A user must share specific pages with an integration in order for those pages to be accessed using the API. This helps, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so in order to share it, start from a new or existing page in your workspace, insert a new database by typing /table and selecting a full page table, give it a title, click on the share button. Click on the share button. Where's that at? Let me watch this little GIF and see where the share button. It's right there. So if I go back to my tab here and go to the Twitch live stream thing, click share, and then click on, maybe we'll go back to the GIF. Wait for it. Share. Click on that thing. Okay. Click on this thing. Click live stream testing because that's my integration. Click invite. Can edit. Sure. Was that it? Wait, I have too many tabs open. Okay, click invite. Your integration now has permission to read, write, and blah, blah, blah. So if I click send, there's the results. Radical, man. So let me take a sip of coffee as celebration. Hey, Ryan. You said, I can't stay long, but your video on making a calendar was a massive help for me, so I just wanted to say thanks. Well, thanks for watching, and I'm glad that I could help. The calendar video, interestingly, has a follow-up video, I don't know if you saw it, where we convert that vanilla JavaScript calendar into a React calendar. So if you haven't seen that, I'd recommend checking it out. The name of the video is something along the lines of converting a JavaScript app into React or something like that. Highly recommend you check that out if you're interested in React or if you want to level up your development game. So the first step here was to get the ID of the database. So in order to get the ID of the database, we would need to query. Can I do an empty query with just an empty string? That would be a great thing. Yes, I can. So I can pass in an empty string to the search URL and get back all of my databases that I've shared with the integration, which is exactly what I need. And I'm going to do that in order to get a list of the databases so that I can then get the ID from the one that I'm looking for. Now, interestingly enough, I don't know necessarily whether or not I really care to use the actual SDK for Notion. And instead, I think maybe I should just use like just the regular fetch API, unless there's a huge benefit to using this. Oh, well, I guess there is, in the sense that I wouldn't have to pass in the header every time. So I kind of like that syntax a little bit better. I'm going to get rid of this because I'm not using sgmail. He said, that was fun to watch, but it wasn't relative to my class, so I haven't used it yet. Well, if that's the case, I also recommend, I don't know if you've seen the original video of the vanilla JavaScript. You can do that and apply that to anything that's more relevant to your class. Hello, Coding Room. Have I ever had a real-time data exchange between your local server and an API? Can you specify a little bit of what you mean by that? A real-time data exchange. I mean, yeah, like a HTTP request is technically a real-time data exchange, right? I mean, it's asynchronous, but I'm not exactly sure what you mean, so. But I will gladly answer your question as soon as I understand it. Does this log anything? I'm a little bit confused. I don't really want to use all this code. I kind of want to start from scratch. But let me just search for how to send requests with the Notion thing. Oh, I see. Notion.request and then the request payload, which happens to look like this. Okay. Cool. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna create I'm gonna create a new file called app.js, which I'm just gonna use as the actual app that I'm building. And I'm just going to take code from here and copy it over to here. Const payload equals, so that I can build my own integration where I'm using their code examples because, yeah, I mean, it's easier just to use their code examples than to figure out how to do everything manually, right? Now I need to create the instance, so that's at the top here. Whoa. It's hard to work in this environment when it's all zoomed in like this, but I know you all have to see what I'm doing. Okay. And then finally I need to get the actual thing here. Okay. Boom. Now, okay, cool. So how can I have to be inside of an asynchronous function in order for this to even work in the first place. If I were to run this right now, I'm going to get an error. So let's try to run it. Node app.js, yeah. It says await is only invalid inside of async functions. So I have to wrap this whole thing inside of an async function, but really only this is like the only asynchronous part of this so far. So let's wrap it here. I'll do a IIFE for that. If you don't know what that is, let me know in the chat. I'll tell you all about it. So let's see if this works. Oh, kind of forgot the async keyword. That was the whole point of that. Database ID is not defined. Okay, so that's the first step, right? I need to get the database ID before I ever run this. So that was what that whole thing was about. So this payload is specific to getting the databases. By the way, I want to use this URL instead. So instead of doing path, all this stuff, I'm going to use search. And the body, I was just using, where is it? Query. So query, and I was passing in an empty string so that I can get a list of all of the databases. So now we should do this, and I'm going to rename this to all databases because it makes more sense. And let's log all databases. Save, go in here, log. Goodness. Request payload is not defined. Yes, because I think I renamed it to payload. So get rid of that. Save, try again. Request fail, unauthorized. Oh, okay. So I need to save. Oops. Oh, man. And I don't need this anymore because I'm getting the ID dynamically. So the only API, or the only environment variable that I need is this Notion key. Yeah, so I save that, run this yet again, and I succeeded. So now I need to pull the ID from this, this object. Although this is of type page, not type database. Huh. So you know what? That's interesting, right? Okay, well, let's just go with pages. So I'm going to call it all pages. My Notion experience isn't exactly masterful, if that's a word. But I just know that I know what I'm trying to do, but I don't know what Notion considers a database and a page. So I'm just going to go with pages for now and see if I can do what I'm trying to do using pages. And if not, then I will have to go with databases. All right, cool. So let's pull out the ID of that page. So const page ID is equal to, and let's look at the shape of the result here. So we have results. So it's going to be results 0, kind of. So results, it'd be all pages, all pages dot results 0. We can do a find in a moment to be a little bit more dynamic and sure of the page that we're trying to find, etc. But for now, I know it's going to be 0, so we'll go with that. 0, since it's the first item in this array, dot ID. So dot ID. And then below this, let's just console.log page ID to ensure that nothing is broken. I don't know why I put a comma. All right, let's see if this logs the ID. ID is not defined, so let's just one more time log all pages, console.log all pages. I might have missed something. It might look a little different here than in Postman. Results 0.id. Did I spell something wrong? Results 0.id. Well, let's try breaking this down one by one. So let's say const results is equal to all pages dot results. Log that. If I can spell, then let's get the first result. So const first result. So this is how I'm debugging, just so you understand. Results 0. Log that. And then the ID would be first result dot ID. And then we could try to log that way. Is it? Oh, you know what? I already figured out what I did wrong. I was trying to log ID instead of page ID. Oh my. So I just debugged for no reason in front of my audience. Love it. Okay, so let's just bring it back to the way it was. And it's supposed to be page ID. Okay. All right, so I got the ID. Now that I have the page ID, I can actually retrieve the page itself and maybe, or update the page, etc. I have access to this page. So update page properties, let's look at the page. Right now we have 2 items in this thing, and let's see if we can view this page data in some way. I don't know what that response is going to look like. So that's what this experimentation is all about. Let's retrieve the page itself. Whoa. It's kind of, there we go. Oh, retrieve a page. The path is going to be /pages/ whatever the page ID. So this payload is specific to search. So we're going to call this search payload, and then update this to say search payload. Now we'll create another payload, const page payload. And it's going to be the same thing, but I don't think this is a post. I think it's a get. And I'm not going to have anything in the body because it is a get. And then the path is going to, we're going to use string interpolation to say /path/ interpolate the page ID. So this actually needs to be a function since it's going to be dynamic, where we pass in the ID for the page here as a string and then append or add the ID here. This has to be a return. I could just use shorthand with parentheses. Boom. So now page payload is a function where we're going to pass in the ID. So now that we are this far, I can say, we'll call this generator, gen for short, and const page payload is equal to page payload gen, and we can just pass in ID here, or page ID is what I should say. Page ID. So let's log what that returns. Oh, and it has to be an await because it is an asynchronous function. So page payload, I'm sorry, that's not the asynchronous part of this. The asynchronous part is where we call request, just like this, where we're getting the all pages using the search. So we're going to say const pages, or page, const page is equal to await notion request, and instead of search payload, we're going to use the page payload. And just to shorten up the code, I could just take this piece right here, and I don't need to set it as a variable. I can just pass in the function call directly, and now let's log in page. Okay. So it looks like we got an error. It says input must not start with a slash. So my guess is that since I put a slash here, it didn't like that. Let's try it again. Request failed, invalid request URL. So, okay. So it's pages / page ID, not page / page. Why did I put path? That's silly. Let's try that again. There it is. Okay. So I think I already got that in the search, didn't I? This is not different. I want to log the search one more time because I'm starting to wonder. Better yet, let me just use Postman. Interesting. So in this result, in this particular result, I don't have anything that shows the data that's actually in here. So if we look, this is the page, right? I'm looking at the page, and I have two checkbox items or to-do list items here on this page. Now it successfully retrieves the title, and it gives me back metadata such as when it was created, the parent information, the properties, but I don't see anything that is related to the actual content on the page itself. Now I'm going to duplicate this tab and do the same thing with the pages. So the pages path, URL, whatever you want to call it. Grab this ID, pass it here. This is a get, and send it, and see. It says, oh, because I accidentally have a body here. That's my bad. Click none, send it. Now the result from retrieve is the exact same thing as the result from search. So I don't need to even make the second API call at all. That's pointless. But I'm still not getting the information that I would expect to get, and I think I know why. I think that that is the separation between pages and databases. Okay, that makes sense. So how can I give access to a database? See, interestingly enough, this is a page, I guess, but this information is being stored in a database. Huh. Okay, so wait, is it... This is where things are going to get a little bit confusing. Okay, really quickly, I'm going to look at someone's chat. Coding Room said, I mean calling a function that resides on a local server via an API. Oh, okay. The function will be responsible for calling the IP address for the microcontroller. I'm not sure if I explained it correctly. I think I get what you're saying. So normally when you're developing an application that communicates with an API, you're going to be calling it from your local server to the API. And you're saying, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you're asking me if there's a way that the API could somehow contact the local server? Is that what you're asking? Just let me know in the chat and I'll get back to you. But I'm just going to tell you that your mindset, if that is what you're talking about, you want to shift your mindset a little bit because really you shouldn't be communicating with a local server from an API to your computer. It should be on a virtual machine or something like that. You'd want to actually deploy your app. But yeah, okay, so I'm having a little bit... Let me get rid of these extra tabs that I no longer need. I do need this, do need this, do need this, and do need that. Okay, cool. I'm going to actually pin this tab. And I'll... No, because then I won't be able to differentiate. Okay. So what is confusing me now is I can't seem to get... I mean, I'll run this again, but I can't seem to get any databases. I mean, I'm assuming, again, that this right here, where, how do I delete this? Seriously, what have I done? There we go. Okay. I thought the information on... Oh, you know what? Okay, so is there not a way to just get the information from a page? Well, let's look at retrieve a page and see what is supposed to come back. Page object. Before I go to there, responses contain page properties, not page content. To fetch page content, use the retrieve block children endpoint. Okay. Now we're talking. So this is the URL we are going to want to use to get block children, as it is called. Now the block ID, we have to get the block ID. So we have to get the list of blocks on a page. So it says we need to was there anything about a list of blocks on this response here? Was there anything blocky? That didn't say anything about a block. So I'm going to have to call it with the page ID of some sort. So I don't have the block ID. I don't know how to get the block ID. So maybe if I just don't pass in a block ID, it'll send me all the blocks for a given page. Is there a way to get all blocks? Okay. Is the search only for pages? I think so. So, okay, what I'm basically trying to figure out is how can I get a list of all the blocks? And the answer is not super obvious unless I'm missing something. I might have to experiment. Let's just send this request. What happens? Invalid request URL. All right. This is a GET request. You have to pass in the block ID? Well, if that's the case, how do I get the block ID? I don't... Man, let me sip some coffee. Well, this one's... Is there anything in that getting started that talks about blocks? Working with page content. Modeling content as blocks. Object block. A page content is represented by a list of block objects. These blocks are referred to as the page's children. Each block has a type, such as a paragraph, heading, or an image. Some types of blocks, such as toggle lists, have children of their own. Right, so pages are also blocks. Pages are a special kind of block, but they have children. Was there a children property on this? There is a parent property. I should call it again just to see. Okay, no. I don't see a children property. This is all title properties. So yeah, title. I don't see anything that specifies that there is children on the page. When retrieving a list of child blocks, you retrieve block children. Okay, but this requires the block ID. You can use the page ID as a block ID. Okay. See, this is an interesting API, and it does seem like it's definitely like good and public, ready for public beta, all that good stuff, but the documentation is a little bit confusing, just a little bit. At least it's good enough for me to figure out what I'm doing. So I'm not complaining or anything, but I just think that there could be some improvements. Obviously, everything could always be improved. But figuring out this kind of stuff is a little bit confusing. Hate to say it. Okay, well, what was the full URL for retrieving a block? Oops. No. Also, the asynchronous clicking for the documentation is a little bit annoying too, just saying. All right, so let's say /children. Unauthorized API token is invalid, but... Oh, well, I need to grab the auth. I thought I did. Definitely didn't, though. Authorization. Bearer token. Send. There we go. Look at that. Look at that. Okay, so now we have... a list of blocks, and then each block has a type. So in this case is to do. So what I want to do is just also kind of whoops, what is going on here? What I want to do is create another block in here somewhere. So let me just think of a block, maybe a header, something like that. Let's do like right here, header, whoa, wrong button, header, heading 1, and we'll just say this is only a test, a terst, this is only a test. So it should autosave, and when I do a search, a send, now we have another block in there. So that's what I wanted to do, was have multiple types of blocks. That way I can experiment a little bit more. So what I am eventually wanting to do, by the way, if you're just now joining the stream, is I want to, as soon as I click on something like this has been completed, I want to send a Discord notification to a Discord server. So really, I'm just building a bot, a Discord bot, I guess. So retrieve the database, get the ID from the object returned. I've got a to-do list, a header, and a title, and all I want to do is set up hooks to whenever I click on one of these, it'll send a notification to a webhook for Discord, and then send a message in a Discord server somewhere out there in the world, which I have ready, but gotta get that far. So I have a list of blocks, and what I'm gonna have to do, I don't know what I'm gonna have to do yet. Let's see if there's anything here. Is there any sort of, maybe I might have to poll, or maybe there's a webhook type of deal. If I go back to the Notion API, like the main page, go to the example code, go to here, look at the index.js file, and see if I can locate, why is it raw? Huh, whatever. Where it is, yeah. Okay, so it is polling. This is actually polling. So you actually have to run, there isn't a hook, webhook, Notion webhook type deal going on. You actually have to run a script that runs over and over again and polls for the requests. So that's fine. So basically what I need to do is essentially call this URL, get a list of all of the to-do items, create a representation of that in RAM, and then when the next cycle runs again, I need to create another representation of the new version of that in RAM and then compare the two, diffing essentially. And if there is a difference between the two in any property that I care about, such as the to-do being completed or one of the to-dos being missing or a new to-do item is created, then I can then trigger an event that will call a webhook on Discord. So let's do that. First things first, let's get a list of all of the to-do items. And that's pretty easy to do because I already have the page. So here, what we want to do is end up calling this URL. So I'm going to need another payload function called blocks payload gen. I'll be a little bit more specific with the ID here in a second, but this is not going to be pages anymore. It's going to be blocks slash block ID slash children. I think it's a get. It is a get. It is indeed a get. And that's basically it. So now that I have the, it looks like I don't even need to make the call for page because I already have the page ID, and Notion considers a page to be a block. So I can get the children by calling that URL. So it looks like I really do not need this stuff anymore. Pretty awesome. This API is pretty powerful. So const block results is equal to await. Instead of page payload gen, which doesn't exist anymore, we'll use block payload gen. And let's log it, make sure it works. Nice. Got some spam in the chat. Spam in the chat. Okay, cool. Log it, and it worked. It worked. Nice. So now the next step is to just get the results, but then filter out any of the results that are not of type to do. I only want to do types. So let's do it. Const to do's is equal to const to do's is equal to block results dot results dot filter. And someone said, "Great work, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate you." For every block, we want to filter out any block that is not of type. So b.type. We want to make sure that it is equal to do. To underscore do. And then let's log to do's, make sure that works. I like to log every single time I do something to ensure that I don't create bugs in my code. So here it is. We have 2 to-do items. Is that correct? Let's find out. I think it is. I have 2 to-do items. That is indeed correct. Now, what is logged here? So we have to do, and then it looks like why is the to-do text an array? Let's find out. Let's log the first to-do items to-do.text property. So to-do's 0.to-do.text. What is that going to look like? It looks like this. Okay. So the actual text is going to be .plain text of that. So let's build an object based off of like what I care about, the information on that to do that I care about. And the information that I care about, const info, to do info, for each to do would be the text for the to do and whether or not it's complete. And I would expect that to be a Boolean. So if I go back here and log the first to do again, just raw, looks like it's taken a second. The request is hung up. There we go. Checked. Okay, so checked is going to be whether or not it's done, but it's going to be the opposite. So since it's not checked, so since checked is false here, that means it's not checked, then I can say that the to-do is not completed. Okay, so it's not the opposite. So completed is going to be to do, essentially like to do, this is pseudocode right here. Anything below this point is pseudocode. I'm just kind of thinking and typing. It would be end up being to do dot checked. And then the text would end up being to do dot underscore do dot text. Was it text? Let me see. Dot text 0 because it's an array dot plain text because that's what the property was. So cutting that because we're going to loop through, we're essentially going to map each to do into an object that I care about. So we take these results and I'm going to chain a map operator to it. Dot map. And for each to do, we want to return a new object that looks more like this. And I have a typo somewhere. Hold on, I got a typo. Let me find it. Where's my typo? to do dot text dot plain text. Oh, I accidentally put it in a quote there. That's what it was. All right, let's log this and see if this is what I want. Please let this work. First try. That would be great. Nice. So let me complete a to-do. Let's say retrieve the database is now complete. Let's go back here, run it, and see if it switched. And it did. Aha. That's awesome. I feel great. So let me just drink some more coffee. Live streaming and things actually going well is nice. All right. So now that I have a list of to-dos on and whether or not they're complete along with the text, this is where I need to create a representation of that in memory. So the easiest way to create a representation of anything in RAM in JavaScript is just to assign it to a variable, which I have right here. But I need to be able to access this variable in a global state, right? Because I need to do a comparison. So let's do this. At the very top of this file, I'm going to create a variable that's going to be global. So var, technically I could use let. In this case, I could use let. And I'm just thinking, so that I might change the way that I'm doing this soon anyway, but let's say last to do, last to do's, because it's an array, is equal to undefined. Now, I don't need to do that. I could just leave it like that. So it's going to be undefined when I first start this, because when you first run this script, there isn't last to do's. Like, we haven't polled yet, so there is no last to do's. But the second time we run this, the second time we poll for to-dos, we will have a last to-dos, because on the second one, the last to-do list was the first one. And then on the third poll, the last to-dos was the second one. You get the idea. So I'm going to rename this to be current to-dos. And now, essentially, I just have to compare current to-dos to last to-dos. Previous to-dos. Yeah, let's do previous to-dos, because that word makes more sense here. So what are the three things that I care about when it comes to checking the to-dos? Well, the first thing is, did the title change? Did the title of the to-dos change in some way? So the three things I care about changing. One, title changes. What the? Two, whether or not a to-do has been completed. So completion of to-dos. And the third thing that I care about is whether or not a to-do has been added or removed. So to-do, well, let's separate those two for the sake of ease. To-do deleted, and then the fourth one is to-do created. So these are the four events. We'll say events, 4 events. Title changes, completion of to-dos, to-do deleted, to-do created, and let's map these to actual event names. Let's say title changes to update. Completion of to-dos, we'll say completed. Or let's not call it completed, because it could be the opposite, right? We could say that a to-do is completed and then later go back and uncheck it. So instead of calling it completed, let's say status update. And then instead of update, we'll say title update. And then here we'll say delete and create. How's that? So we're going to have 4 events: create, delete, status update, and title update. Now, each of these events is going to have 2 things. It's going to have the type of event, so for example, title update, along with the new title. So each of these is going to have, each event is going to have 2 events. Will have 2 properties. The properties will be the event type and the event content. Sure. Okay. So now what this eventually translates into is our Discord bot will have 4 different events that we're going to trigger. So I guess I should create the Discord bot right now. So Discord webhooks I'll create the Discord bot now. Sign in. I'm going to sign in over here so that I don't accidentally give away some of my credentials or something. So in the meantime, I would give you something entertaining to look at on the right, but I can't think of anything. Maybe just like a cat GIF would have been nice, but next time. So I'm just logging in over on the left to create a bot. There we go. Okay, so I'm logged in, and I need to potentially go here. I need to create an app for Discord. And the easiest way to do that is to go into actual Discord. So I'll have to open Discord. Discord. I like how they actually let you do this from the app itself instead of having to go through all this other stuff. Hopefully nothing crazy shows up. That would be a shame. Okay, let me make sure that none of my DMs show up. I really don't have anything to hide, but it's just personal stuff, you know. Let's go here. That should do it. Oh, I should probably make sure that it's all visible. Ah, I missed. Go back. There we go. Okay. So I have this. Now I need to create a webhook. Create webhook. Where is that at? Webhooks, webhooks, webhooks. Advanced? Connections, authorized apps. Yeah. Streamer mode enabled. Oh, it knows I'm streaming? Huh? Okay. I see. So since I'm streaming, it's trying to hide some information. But in the end, all I'm trying to do is go to server settings and the integrations tab. So server settings is actually over here, I think. Server settings, integrations, create webhook, Spidey bot. Nice. All right, so I'm going to do 4, right? So we have to do, well, actually, no, let's just do 1 integration with 4 events. So we'll say to do live stream, to do app. Oh my. And we'll put this in the general channel and yeah, copy the webhook URL. Yeah, save it. There it is. So now I have the webhook URL. That should probably be an env. So we'll say Discord webhook URL is equal to, paste in the URL. And then now I have that URL. So we'll create a const here at the top. Const webhook URL is equal to process.env.discord webhook URL. Make sure that I spell that right. Discord webhook URL. Got it. Okay. Good stuff. I'm in the wrong file. Okay. So now I have the webhook URL. Let's just go ahead and fire off an event whenever there's a diff. So the first step is going to be to find a diff. Really quickly, what? Let's start there. Let's start there. Let's just let's find a diff, and if there is a diff, then we'll trigger an event. So I'm going to need a function, and this function is going to be called diff, const diff, and it is going to be a function that takes 2 items. It's going to take the to-do list 1 along with the to-do list 2. And it's just going to return whether or not there's a difference between the two, and if there is a difference, what is the difference? Essentially, these two props that we were talking about here, the type and the content. So let's just go ahead and say const diff is equal to diff. Let's just call this differ, just to differentiate between the variable and the function name. And let's pass in the two to-dos. So to-do list 1, let's call this prev and current. Prev and cur. Cur is short for current, prev is short for previous. So the previous is going to be previous to-dos. And the current is going to be current to-dos. Current to-dos. Okay. So now, hypothetically, let's just say hypothetically we finished the differ function, and let's just think about this particular path first before we move on to the differ function. So the first thing we need to do is determine whether or not there is a previous to-dos. So if previous to-dos, then we can run this stuff. If not, if not, then we do nothing. We just return. So we'll do nothing if this doesn't exist. Then, after we do all of the diff checking and we determine whether or not there is a diff, we will call Discord webhooks. Then after we call the Discord webhooks and we get a response and we're good there, the next thing we're going to do is then set previous to-dos, previous to-dos equal to current to-dos. So we're reassigning previous to-dos to the current to-dos, and then it's going to loop back through and run it again. All right. Okay, so we have someone that says, "What are you doing, bro?" Well, basically, I'm playing around with the Notion API. I have a like a to-do list here on Notion, and I'm playing around with the API to say whenever I make a change, update a to-do, delete a to-do, change the text, etc., I want to send a notification via a Discord bot to my Discord server in the general chat. That's all. And then I'm going to do a tutorial on this, an official one. So this is just me learning the Notion API as I go. It's brand new, came out like a day ago. So back to what I was doing. Okay, so I need to reassign it here. Okay, good stuff. Why did I delete that? And this I can just pretty much put in here because this is where it's going to matter. Now, as you can tell, this particular function here only ever gets called once. And I need it to just call all the time. So let's just say we poll every second. Let's set a timer to call this function every second. Before I do that, how about I test this differ function out? Okay, so how are we going to compare the two? The 4 events that I care about, title changes. So let's do a, this is going to be fun. This is going to be where things get a little bit more algorithmic. We're going to have to check for all 4 events. And each event, we need to check for every to-do. So we're going to be doing some for loops here, a lot of them. So let's start with title changes. So const title changes is equal to, now prev and cur are both arrays. They're arrays of to-dos. So we can say prev.reduce and we want to reduce it to an array as well. And we're initializing this reduce as an empty array. And we need the accumulator and the value. So for every single one of these items in the previous, we want to compare it in some way to the current. In this case, title changes. So we will say if, and instead of saying val, I'm going to say current item. If current item dot text is, I could use a ternary, yes, I agree. But right now I'm just like trying to just basically think. So if current item dot text is not equal to cur, so now we're looking in here, we need the index, so we need to pull the index out, index, cur index. Ooh, no, see, I can't use indexes because the order might not be the same. So what I have to do is use a find. Ooh, but I can't do that because it might be different. So I need to add another item in the previous and current to-dos arrays, objects, called ID. So each to-do has an ID, right? Because it's a block. Where are the blocks? Okay, so to-do. So each one has an ID. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to use this unique identifier here. Yep, Notion's API does appear to be free. Just to let you all know. But yeah, I need to grab the ID out. So let's do that immediately. I keep getting distracted by the chat, but I just want to make sure I communicate with all of you. So, so add an ID, and that's going to be to-do dot ID. Excuse me. All right. So now I have an ID. Awesome. So now I can compare the ID. So cur.find, we want to find the item where item.id is equal to current item.id. Boom. And just for the sake of ease and clarity, I'll assign that to a variable. So const previous to do is equal to that. And I know it's kind of hard to see everything on the screen at the same time because I'm so zoomed in. So I'm going to try to break stuff onto separate lines in a way that I normally wouldn't, just so you can all see what I'm doing. So here we have current item. We're assigning this. We're saying the current, no, get rid of that. Boom. I'm confusing myself. All right, so we're going to go through the current and find the item where the item.id is equal to the current item.id. So the previous to do is that. Now we can say if previous to do dot text does not equal current item dot text, and I'm going to call this current to do instead of current item. Cur.find item, blah, blah, blah. Okay. If there is a difference between the two, then we need to return everything in the accumulator along with the new object. And we want two properties, right? Type and content. So the type is going to be of type title update. So copy this into here. And the content is going to have, how about instead of content, we have previous and current. Now the previous, we can do the previous title. We can say that the previous title was previous to do dot text, get rid of the quotes here. And the current is curr, whoops, current to do dot text. Awesome. Otherwise, simply return the accumulator. Okay. 1 down, 2 to go, 3 to go. Now they're all going to be basically the same logic, so luckily it's going to be very copy and paste. So const, so that's the title changes. Now let's look at completion of to-dos. Actually, let's skip this one and do this one last and do to-do. No, I'm sorry. Let's do completion of to-dos. So const completed completion changes is equal to, and I'm basically just going to copy this whole block here. And instead of checking for the text, I'm just going to say completed. And I know I could shorten this code, but this is a first iteration. And instead of title update, it's going to be status update. Now this is going to be a Boolean. So I guess, yeah. So previous to do dot completed. Let's just leave it as a Boolean. I could have converted it to a string, like a message, but I don't want to do that. And now we have both the title changes and the completion changes. I think I just want to start there and see what this looks like and see if it works. So from this function, because we're still inside of this this differ function, I want to return both completion changes and title changes for now. Title changes and completion changes. Someone said, can you use regular function instead of arrow function for this? Yes, you could always use either one. It's totally up to you. I prefer arrow functions in like 90% of cases, so I always use arrow functions. But in this live stream, I'm just going to continue using arrow functions. So, but you could easily convert them. So now this function is returning a object with title changes and completion changes, which could essentially be empty array or an array of changes. Okay. So now we have diff. I want to log diff, console.log diff. Now, if you understand what we're doing so far, you'll know that when I run this, it's not going to ever get here because the first time we run this, previous to-dos is going to be false. And since that's false, we'll never end up in this code block, and therefore nothing will happen here. So I need to initialize previous to-dos as an array of to-dos just to start for testing. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to actually hard code an array of to-dos here. Just to test some stuff out. And there's 3 items per to-do. There's ID, completed, and text. Which I can copy all that information from here, from the call. Or, yeah, from here is fine. So the ID and then the text is retrieve the database. And then there's just one more. Actually, I think that's supposed to be true. And then the other one is, here's the ID. And the text is get the ID from the object returned. Whoops, wrong thing. Here. So let's put both of them as false. I know that if I save this to my actual page here and look, I know that retrieve the database has been completed. I purposely want to have there be a difference between the real data and the previous to-dos because I want to trigger my differ function to return a difference between the two. So that's why I'm hard coding it that way. Now, in theory, when I run this, maybe diff will log some diffs. find out. I'm sure there's a bug somewhere, right? Current item is not defined, and the reason why that exists is because I renamed it to current to do, but I forgot to fix it here, right? And I no longer need to pull out index. I gotta do the same thing here. No longer need index. All right, let's see what bug we run into this time. No bugs. All right. So, okay. So in this, we actually need to return the ID of of the to do as well. Otherwise, we'll never know which to do we're talking about. So ID. So I need to return the ID for each of these as well. Okay. Run this again, and I mean, this is accurate in a sense, but it's kind of not accurate because let me think about this for a minute. Something about my algorithm is off because basically I have false for both. Only one of these is different because if we go here, I have false here. It's not checked, it's not completed, but one of them is. So we should only have one item. We should only have one completion change, quote unquote. Now, everything else looks great. Got to figure out what is going on here. So current is false and current is false, but previous is undefined. That's what it is. It's undefined. And the reason why it's undefined is because it's probably not called completed. I might have been, it's complete, not completed. Just add a D there and it should work. There it is. Look at it. Oh. All right. Another victory. Just keep going. Let's try it with a title change. So this one should be true. So if I run this, now we should get nothing back. Nothing should come back now. Correct. Nothing comes back. So now let's just change this to like a capital T and see if we get a title change. We get a title change and it shows the difference. The current is capitalized and the previous is not capitalized. This is going fairly well. All right. Now the next step is, let me put this in my dictionary so that it stops showing up blue. It's kind of getting on my nerves. All right. So the next two events are whether or not one has been deleted and whether or not one has been created. So those will actually probably be easier. Const deleted to-dos is equal to current. What we want to do is see if there is something in the previous that does not exist in current, right? So it's going to be an array of IDs, basically. Now, in order to do that, we can just loop through previous. So previous dot reduce, because we want to reduce it to an array. Or, yes, let's do that. All right. Let's reduce it to an array. And we will pull out, again, the accumulator and the current to do. And what we'll do is say if we don't find this particular ID in the current list, then we know that the ID has been deleted. So if current to do dot ID, okay, if not find, so if not current dot find, there we go. So if we cannot find this ID in the list of currents, then we know that we have a deleted to do. So we will return an array that is the accumulator along with a new object where the ID is the current to-do.id, and the content is going to be basically just, I don't know if we need content here. We don't need content. But yeah, we don't need content. So yeah. So else we're just going to say return the accumulator. All right. And we're going to do the exact same thing for created to-dos, but it's going to be backwards, right? Instead of looping through previous, we want to loop through current, and instead of finding in current, we want to find in previous. And that should do it. Now, let's test that theory. So deleted to-dos and created to-dos. Okay, someone in the chat asked, hey, what is Visual Code Dictionary? Can you explain it? Okay, it's just so I have an add-on that allows me to, it's like a spell checker. And whenever I type in a word like this, that's like so banana is a fruit, right? So B-A-N-A-N-A, that's spelled correctly. But what if I accidentally put two N's here? Now it's going to tell me, hey, that's misspelled. But if I type in a word that I know is correct, like that library up here, since it's not a real word, Notion HQ, it's not a real word, VS Code doesn't recognize it and tries to tell me that it's misspelled. But I know that it's not misspelled, so I go in and manually add it to my dictionary. That's what it is. Hope that answers your question. Okay, so let's start testing this out. Does this give me what I think it's going to give me? So to test it out, we'll just delete it to do. Boom, done. And we get title changes, which is correct because I forgot this. So let me fix that. We should get nothing for completion, nothing for, oh, I'm getting created. It's backwards. It's backwards. So actually, let's go back down here. Let me re-add that. Let's go back down here and switch the two. So created to-dos, this is actually deleted to-dos. And then here, this is actually created to-dos. I had my logic backwards on that. So let's go back up, delete the second to-do, and run this. Now we get the fact that there is a deleted to-do, and here's the ID. Now let's just verify the ID, right? So the ID that it says is deleted is this, and that does indeed match this, so that's correct. That's working good. Now let's try the exact same thing, but instead with created, just to verify that that works, we'll say this. Let's just give it a fake ID, and then a little bit of fake text, you know, blah, blah, blah. Save, and let's see if that shows up in our created to-dos. Ooh, we got an error. It says cannot read property text of undefined. Cannot read property text of undefined. App line 80. Right here. Gotcha. Here. I wonder about this. It's kind of a cop-out way to do what I'm doing, but it might just work. 85, line 85. Yeah, I shouldn't do it like that. So basically what's happening is I should be going through current instead of previous for this, right? Good coffee. Let me look here. So previous has an item that current does not. So previous has an item that current does not have. And what's happening is we're looping through the previous, and there's this extra item inside of previous, and we're just assuming that they both exist. So what we have to do is just add an additional check in here that says if current exists, if this exists inside of the current array, then run this logic, otherwise return the accumulator. So we should say if previous to do, no, if current to do, sorry, current to do, if that exists and this stuff, then we can run the logic. So we'll do the same thing here too. Now, that should do it, right? Let's find out. It didn't. So line 80 still has a bug. We could do a check for both. See if we get past that point. So line 80, let's see if we get past line 80 now. We do. So let's do this and see if the bug is fixed. It is. So I created a new to-do, and I know that's the to-do I created because it has that extra long ID, right? So if I go all the way up here, it has that extra long ID. So now if I get rid of this, we should get absolutely nothing back because nothing has changed whatsoever. Good. And then if I change this to that, I should get a title change, right? We get a title change, correct. That shows the difference between the two. And then finally, we can do a completed change just to verify that that works without any bugs. And we have a winner. Fantastic. Okay. So the diffing algorithm is done. Good stuff. And yeah, I did just call it the diffing algorithm. Let me just format this code a little bit, make it look less ugly. Okay, so now we're here. We have the diff. Now what we need to do is if there is a diff, we need to trigger the webhook on Discord. Okay, and we should trigger the webhook on Discord for every single event that exists. So since we know that diff is an object that contains those 4 properties, we can check them and determine if there are any differences. And for every difference we find out of the 4, we'll trigger the webhook. Or we could just trigger it once with all of them. So what does that look like? What does a webhook call look like? It's pretty simple. I remember doing it one time, and it was like really easy. So this is a GitHub tutorial, but all I need is that URL and like what the body is supposed to look like. Can you just show me an example? I mean, yeah, like just the URL is all I care about. I don't know what. Okay. Discord webhook example. I just need an example URL. This might be more what I'm looking for. Example webhook. Call the webhook. Name, avatar. Don't need the avatar. But name. So name of the webhook. Returns a webhook object on success. Modify webhook, get webhook, delete webhook, execute webhook. So I have the URL for the webhook in my env right here. And, oh, give me that. Ah, there we go. Let's put it in Postman and just call it, see what happens. Okay. Did anything happen in the chat? No. So in order to execute the webhook, we just have to post to it. Maybe that's all. Maybe we just, instead we just post to it. and then it'll tell me what I'm missing. Content type header. So expected content type header to be this. Let's set the content type, get out of the way. Let's set the content type to this. Content type to this, send it again. Cannot send an empty message. Now, all I have to do is figure out what the name of the property is for that, which I don't know, maybe it's just message. Maybe it's literally just message. Hello world from postman. Send. Cannot send an empty message. What's wrong here? Oh, yeah, it's supposed to be URL form encoded. So message or form URL encoded. And then here's the actual message. Click send. Cannot send an empty message. Well, what is it? What is the property supposed to be? The property name is supposed to be content. Is that right? Yeah, let's try that. I like that. Content. Boom. There it is. Did it show up? There it is. Okay. So successfully, yeah, successful. Now let's just take that same concept and send the proper information to Discord. So let's use the fetch API. Actually, I can't use the fetch API because I'm not in a browser. So let's use Axios. Let's import Axios from Axios, which means I need to install Axios. What? npm install Axios. Let Axios install while I take a sip of coffee. Clear. And now that I have Axios, I can make the HTTP request to Webhook, to Discord's Webhook. So Axios.post. And I want to say the first one is headers, or is the second one headers? So it goes data and then the config. So the config here is the second argument, and the headers, we have to, oh, is that capitalized? We have to say content type. And we have to set that content type to, where was it? This. And that's all for the headers. Now the body, there was one, we actually, since this is form URL encoded, there's a specific way we got to do this. And I got to remember how to do that really quick. Axios URL encoded, form URL encoded, example. So how to send URL encoded data using Axios. So it looks pretty simple. You pretty much just stringify an object. QS, what is QS? So you have to import QS. It's a cool query string parsing and stringifying library. Sir, what is Axios? It's a library for making HTTP requests. It's pretty much the standard. Most people would probably end up using Fetch API if they were in a browser, but since we're using Node.js outside of a browser, we need to bring our own HTTP library, and that happens to be Axios in this case. So I need to actually install QS, then up here I need to import QS, import QS from QS. Is that a default export? It is not. Okay, so now I can do this as the data for my Axios request. So where is my Axios request? It's right here. Let me just look one more time. So Axios, okay. It would look like this. And the reality is I prefer their syntax. So Axios, instead of doing Axios.post, we're going to do Axios with method set to post, like that. And then we can set the data equal to this. And then the headers, what is going on here? Oh, forgot a parenthesis. And the headers as this. And I'm just gonna yoink that. I just said yoink. All right. Cool. So now we're making the request to the, so instead of item 1 and item 2, we need to put the actual stuff, right? Let's say we're doing this for each, excuse me. Let's say we're doing this for each difference that we find. So there could be a total of 4 requests made. Can be a total of 4 requests made. How long have I been streaming? Okay, well, I'm getting close to being done, but I am also kind of getting exhausted. I think it's been at least 2 hours, but I could be wrong. Okay. So let's just start with the first diff possibility here, which would be what is called title changes. Let's just start with title changes. If diff.title changes.length, if we have any title changes, then let's go ahead and call Axios with type title changes. Oh, almost spilled my coffee. And what I should do, I don't know what sort of information I can send here. Can I send an array? Test 1, test 2, and we'll just call this content. Can I send an array? That would be awesome. I don't even know if this is really gonna work. So let's force a change here, a title change, and see if it works. Oh, wait, wrong. Node app.js, there we go. To load an ES module, set type module in package.json, and I'll just switch it to require for now, just to make my life easier. And the easiest way was to just copy this little code example up here. Okay, that'll make my life a little easier for now. All right, let's try this again. The URL argument must be of type string, received undefined. Yeah, I forgot to include the URL. Sorry about that. URL, and that should be the webhook URL. All right, try again. Request failed with 400. 400. Is there any sort of debug information in this? I don't see it. But I could catch. I could do a catch here. Dot catch. Console.log error. I don't know if that's going to give me any more information than previously, but it did. Oh. Well. Wait. It must not want me to do an array. Let's just try it without this property and see if I get an error. Cannot send an empty message. Oh, wait, was it? That's silly. I forgot. It's supposed to be message or content, right? Content. I forgot what I was doing there for a second. Okay. There it is. And yes. Okay. So what I need to probably do is build a string representation of the object. That would be the best thing to do. So that's what I will do. So I need to do that now. And if diff.titlechanges.length, we'll build this Axios request and say content title changes, but instead of doing it like that, we should say title changes for the following. Or instead of doing IDs for this, let's just log the to-do before and after for each one that was changed. So I'm going to have to use string interpolation for that. And what is the best way to represent this in a message form? I mean, I could just stringify it. That could be the best way to do it for now. Oops. Let's just do this for now. Let's take diff.title changes and just json.stringify that. See what that kind of looks like. It's probably going to look a little messy. Yeah. And I wonder, there's probably some add-on that I could get that just like makes JSON look good in Discord. But for now, this is fine. So working good so far. Now, the only step remaining is to set this back to undefined by default. And instead of hard coding the previous to-dos, I should be essentially running a polling system. So for every 1 second, I want to do this. So set interval. I don't know, scope might be a little weird with arrow functions, but let's just see what happens. Every 1,000 milliseconds, let's run this function. I don't know if this is going to work. Just going to put that out there. I should have put a message in there that says polling, but let's see what happens. So here's my Discord, and I'm going to delete everything that's in here just so I can have a nice clean workspace to see changes that might occur. And let's change the title of one of the to-dos. So let's go here and say DDD and see if anything pops up in the Discord server. Okay, nothing popped up, which means I feel like I probably got a bug somewhere. Yeah, nothing popped up in here. So let's put some logs in here and figure out what's going on. So the first thing I want to do is probably say console.log polling ... And then we want to probably go to here and say console.log previous to-dos, followed by the actual list of previous to-dos. Then we probably want to log here as well. Diff. And then we can just log diff.title changes. Save. And let's see what happens when I run this. Polling, polling, polling. So the first thing that I'm noticing is we're not getting... I see. So I need to actually put all of this code inside of the... Let's just put everything inside the set interval. Run this again. That didn't do it. That didn't do it. Don't want to get ahead of myself here. So what's happening is it's never getting this far right here. We're never getting this far. So previous to-dos is never getting set. Oh wait, is it because of this? No. So let's log here. Let's say console.log reassigning. And let's log current to-dos. See if that shows up. Polling. It's never getting that far. What is going on here? Do I need to... I don't think so. Now we're getting into a territory where I'm confused, but I'll figure it out. Don't worry. So it's never even getting that far. Are we even getting into this asynchronous function? We are getting into the asynchronous function. And where is it breaking? Let's just keep going until we find where it's breaking. Okay, it's getting there. It's getting there. Is it getting here? No, it wouldn't be set timeout. No, it wouldn't be set timeout. We're definitely wanting an interval, but at least I am. But we're never getting in here. Why would that be? Well, let's log previous to-dos. Console.log previous to-dos outside of this if block. Okay, it's undefined, which is what I would expect, but it's never going in here. Is that weird? Am I? Well, yeah, of course it's never going in there because it's never set. Oh, wow. I need to put this outside of this curly brace. Silly me. All right, let's try that again. Polling. There it is. Oh, but now it's like, it's probably firing off. Oh, okay. Okay, so that looks good. Let's go ahead and get rid of the logs here and try to make a change. Okay, so let's go here and let's change this back to the original state and see if we get a message here. Hey, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Okay. 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 All right. Almost done here. And now all we have to do is do all 4 of these. Now, obviously, in a real-world application, I wouldn't be doing such manual boilerplate code, but this is really just for experimentation because I'm going to do an official tutorial on the Notion documentation very soon. If you haven't yet subscribed, highly recommend you subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can see all of my tutorial content. Okay, so diff title changes, let's do completion changes. And then we would do completion changes. Because this is a really inefficient way to do this, but it's definitely perfectly fine for experimentation purposes. And what is it? Deletion changes? Deleted to-dos? Do the same thing, deleted to-dos. And then deleted to-dos. And then the very last one here, created to-dos. Save, and let's test everything out. But before I test it out, let's delete this and see if I can zoom in a little bit so you can see. Oh, wow. You can definitely zoom in, but I don't know if that's looking very good. I wish I could collapse this. I don't know if I can. I don't think I can. Well, that's about as zoomed in as I'm going to be able to get. So hopefully you guys can see this well enough during this little test run. So let's start the app. Okay, the polling has started. Now I'm going to complete a to-do. So I'm just going to click this little button right here and see if we get a message. We get a message. It says completion changes, and then it shows the data here. It says status update. Previously, it was completed, and now it is not completed. So actually, that is backwards. So in the diffing algorithm here, the logic is backwards. So I just need to flip that really quick. Where is it? Deleted to-dos. Wait a minute. Wait, what is this logging? Completion changes. Hold on, sorry. Let me just... Yes, okay, sorry. Completion changes. There we go. So instead of previous to-do dot completed, current to-do dot completed. Interesting. Where I'm setting that is right here. If it's checked, then it is completed. Okay, well, since this isn't like an actual tutorial, I'm not going to worry too much about that. It is doing exactly what I want it to do with the Notion API, but I don't want to spend too much time debugging this, so I'm going to carry on. So let's uncomplete both of these. See if we get messages. We do. Okay, great. So now let's test deleting a to-do. Let's see what happens if I delete a to-do. So I'm going to see if I can actually delete a to-do. Should probably figure that out. Delete. There we go. So I deleted a to-do. Do we get... Okay, it's the opposite. Created a to-do. So again, this is bugs with my actual source code that I've written. It has nothing to do with the API. So let's see if we get an event if I actually created to-do. So let's say test the app. Boom. And that came up because I was typing. So that is correct. I should probably, in the end, in a more realistic real world setting, I wouldn't set it to 1 second, and I would do some other stuff to ensure that as I'm typing, it's not firing off webhooks. But yeah, that is correct. And again, I know that this is correct because I had deleted to-dos and created to-dos backwards, and I just created a to-do, so I know that's working. And then the final event is actually changing the title, which I just tested, and I know that that works. Title changes, pops up, shows the previous text along with the current text. And yeah, it looks like that's working. So quick recap of what we did. We were testing out the Notion API because this came out about 24 hours ago. We were just testing it out just to see what it's all about, see what use cases might exist for it. And all we did was built a very simple application that dug into a Notion page, specifically a to-do list, gets all the to-dos and listens for changes. And whenever a to-do item changes, it hits a Discord webhook server. And inside of the webhook server, you get updates. It's just a Discord bot. You get updates on any to-do items. Now, not really a super practical application, but does show the effectiveness of the Notion API. It shows how to use it. And I am pretty excited about this API since it is new, and Notion is a pretty interesting app. So I can see tons of new things coming out in the near future, and one of those things is going to be a tutorial on my channel for the Notion API, which I'm excited to make soonish. So just going to go ahead and hop off here. I hope you all have a great day.